Joining me now is a man. He holds a 5-1 record. He'll fight at UFC 273 against Ian Garry. Thanks a lot for joining me, Darian Weeks.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that.
Definitely, brother. Now, sound out of breath, obviously, in the training room. How's it going down there?
They're going good. They're going good. Yeah, I just got done with a round of cardio on the fan bike, and if you've ever been on a fan bike, you know how that goes.
Definitely, definitely. Now, I want to go back. I checked out your record over on Tapology. I noticed that you held a giant amateur record. Talk to me about that. What was the reasoning for being so long as an amateur? A lot of guys rush into becoming a pro. They dive in there a little fast. You obviously didn't take this route.
Yeah, my main reason for doing a long amateur record is so that I wouldn't have those holes going into pro. A lot of guys, have 5 or 6, 7 amateur wins. They think they did good, and they jump on the pro, and then sometimes you see them getting beat, relatively easy. But I went ahead and did a long amateur record because I also did Worlds over in Bahrain next to Saudi Arabia, and then also in Australia. Shout out to that Australia Commission over there in IMMAF. They really put me together on that one. But yeah, I just wanted to see people from different countries, something that you don't get to see in America when you do an amateur record in America. You don't get to see those nationalities and how they train and how they work things in the cage and how they do stuff. So I really wanted to get a hold of that because fighting on the UFC stage, you fight people from all races and all backgrounds. So really just to get a grasp and really to understand the whole game of MMA before I went ahead and transitioned over to what would be finally my pro career.
Definitely. Now that amateur, you talk about obviously the IMAF, the amateur championships. You went over there. You competed twice. What was that experience like? Because you don't see tournament formats in the United States much anymore. What was that like?
It was a very competitive environment. Not to mention, like you said, you don't really see those tournaments over here in America. It's 5 days, 5 fights, back to back to back. And not only that, making weight each morning you wake up. So it really teaches you discipline on the weight cutting circumstance. And then also it teaches you how to have that drive, day in and day out. When we fight one fight over here, amateurs or pro, we give it all we got. We don't usually have to worry about turning around and fighting the next day. Over there, you do. So I made sure that, it taught me the experience that, you can go 100% every day, multiple days at a time and not break, not weary, not get, tired out. So it gave me a good grasp on, the world of MMA and also like what my tank was like. It gave me a good grasp on what I was capable of, how I could perform, and how soon I could perform.
What'd you come into this sport with? Combat sports. I noticed on your professional record that you have a few boxing bouts as well. So did you come in as that your background? Did you do wrestling in high school or anything like that, or did you come in as an MMA fighter?
I definitely came in this background as a wrestler. I wrestled in school, all through school coming up, and I also did football. So I was quite the athlete. All around training at all times, and I really found this sport just on the sheer whim that I was able to beat somebody up legally, and that eventually they'd pay me for it. So I jumped in, head first, and really wanted to take grasp of everything that the sport had to offer, not just mixed martial arts, not just wrestling, but also boxing. So that's when you see me transition over to boxing in my pro career. Also in my amateur career, I don't know why I list none of this, but did kickboxing bouts. Just wanted to learn all around the sport. And I wanted to be good at it, whatever aspect that would take, whatever competition I had to be involved in or whatever practice I had to do. I really wanted to do it, head on. So that's what drove me into that.
Now, as a pro, you were 5-0 before entering the UFC. A lot of Midwest competition for your first four bouts, and then you made a debut with LFA, which got you into the UFC. I notice, a lot of guys don't get into the UFC with that 5-0 record. They fight a little bit more possibly before getting there. But do you think your amateur record made you feel like you were more than ready to be in the octagon?
Yes, I definitely think it made the amateur record, especially not only the amateur record, but also, like I said, going back to fighting those tournaments. Those tournaments are held at a very high level in those other countries. They run it just like the UFC profession. Fans fill the stands. You have an arena that's as big as a UFC arena. You have the cage that's a UFC cage, and they really make you feel the presence of a real professional fight. So I feel like, be involved in that so many days back to back, and being involved in that at an early stage in my MMA career helped me be ready to jump in at the UFC level whenever they needed me. And I guess they felt the same way, as in, like you said, not a lot of people get 5-0 and then jump up to the UFC, and usually they have more than that. But obviously they seen something in me that said I was ready, and they put me up here.
Yeah, like a lot of guys will go through the Contender Series or something like that. That wasn't never in the woodwork for you. It was LFA and then just bounced right over.
Actually, yeah, Contender Series was in the woodwork for me twice, actually. The first time, one of my teammates, one of my coaches that was with me had gotten COVID, so that X'd us out of one of them. And then the second one, I think the guy would wanted a different opportunity or didn't want quite that fight that quickly. I don't know. But so both of those Contender Series were out the window for me. And I guess, they kind of seen that as, somebody who's hungry who wanted to do Contender Series back to back. So they offered me a short notice fight. I said yes immediately, and I did my best I could in there when on 4 days' notice.
Yeah, definitely. Short notice fight against the guy who is an absolute banger, Brian Barberina. He puts everything into those fights. You're a guy very well rounded, as you said, kickboxing, boxing, wrestling, everything in your wheelhouse. How'd you see that fight playing out before you got in there? And obviously, this is a guy that puts everything into it, as I said. Were you impressed with your own performance?
I really wouldn't say impressed, as in seeing I took a loss.
Of course.
But I was glad on 4 days' notice to get the opponent that I had, because it did let me get somebody who, like you said, puts everything into competing in that ring. There's multiple people from the top 10, even the top 5, who went against him and never were able to finish him. So it was a great opponent to have for my first fight for 4 days' notice. I feel like I should have maybe etched out a little more effort. Maybe I got too content with finally being in the UFC, or maybe I got too hell-bent on it only being 4 days' notice. So I have, put that in my bag. Whatever that may have been, I would have liked to done better. And, but it actually gives me something to, like a chip on my shoulder to go out there the next time I fight, or every time I fight in the UFC, and leave what I can in there and give my best performance every time.
You said the UFC obviously saw something in you at 5-0 to bring you over there. You got Brian Barberina in your first fight. Now they're putting you up against Ian Garry, who they're trying to build as well from the looks of it. He's interviews all over the place and whatnot. However, in his first fight, we saw him susceptible. He got hit, he got punched, he got rocked at one point, but he came back and turned the table. What'd you take away from that initial performance and the susceptibility? Does that play into your game plan?
There's a lot of things I took from that fight. Like you said, he got touched a lot. He wasn't as, unbeatable as, people made it seem. I took things away from that also, that, he just, didn't come out of there humbly, which he should have. I understand he got some knockout, but that was, a not 100% performance on his part. So for him to come out and, say, yeah, I'm the new future. I would have, myself, I would have came out of that and said, yes, I got the win, but there's stuff I need to work on. As you can tell, he got touched a lot coming in and out of the pocket. He got, kind of controlled on the fence. He did have his little moment on the fence, but it was taken away just that. So it gave me a lot of insight on how his game is, on how he feels, kind of going up against athletes which are that nature, which everybody in the UFC should be taken seriously. You shouldn't take anybody for granted, because this is at the top of the sport. They're here for a reason. They're a fighter. They're a good fighter at that, and they're, a strong athlete. So I think he kind of took that as, he took that, as a light work for him. He thought, oh, this guy's very beatable. And that guy went in there and showed him that you have to work to beat me. You got to get punched in the face. You're going to have to bleed a little. You're going to have to get tired to beat me. So that makes me understand where his mindset's set on when they give him somebody that he doesn't think is up to his par. And hearing from his interviews, he obviously doesn't think I'm up to his par, and he will find out very quickly that that is definitely not the case and that I need to be taken seriously 100%, which I feel like that's what the UFC did and understood when I had my fight with Byron Barberena, went to decision. They understood that, hey, I'm going to go in there and not be afraid to stand in front of somebody and punch him, not be afraid to grab him on the ground, use all my energy I can, no matter which round it is, first, second, or third. And they seen that because I went up against Barberena, who does the exact same thing. And we kind of had a battle. So I feel like they put him in the testing pool, and he's not going to come out unscathed.
Definitely. You touched on it there. I wanted to ask. Obviously, you said in his interviews that you feel like he's overlooking you a little bit in this fight, and he doesn't believe in your skills. That obviously doesn't matter to you. But do you see the media potentially overlooking you in this as well? Does any of that get to you at all?
Yes, I do believe that a lot of media as well is overlooking me, but I don't let that get to me. I'm an underdog guy. I'm the guy that, like you said, doesn't have a young background. I didn't practice when I was 7. I ain't practiced this when I was 13, 12 growing up. I came in the sport in my 20s, but I took it at full.
Unfortunately, we lost Darian Weeks there. Phone cut out. Technical difficulties happen. But this guy will take on Ian Garry at UFC 273. Should be an epic fight. As we said, he's not being overlooked. He doesn't feel that. Obviously, his team doesn't feel that. I want to thank Ed Cap from Meridium for setting this interview up for me. And I'd like to thank Darian Weeks for taking the time out of his day to do this interview. You can catch that UFC 273 April 9th live on pay-per-view.